Recording bars, Tommy?
Yeah.
Well, we had a general shot. Then we'll set up the next.
Why don't you whistle in the microphone and record Tom?
I'm fine, I mean, I have to do that person who's,
You don't have to use the tripod to do it.
Yeah, well, it's, and I would carry around the cord.
Huh?
And I would carry around the cord.
Well, sure.
What?
Very around the board.
Sure. Learn your own skinning.
I doubt that.
When we start hearing music, you still got about 2 minutes left on the tape.
He's a good coach.
So,
I'll let you know.
after the beat, start going for a little while. Find a break. Yep.
Okay, Mellow.
Okay. Governor, WTEN in Albany would like to ask, how do you reconcile the fact that the people whose lives you are trying to legislate, the 19 and 20-year-olds, who are so adamantly opposed to the drinking age increase, in other words, SASU?
That's often the case. As a matter of fact, one of those people is in my house, my daughter Madeline, who is 19 and who doesn't want to see the purchase age changed to 21. It's often the case in this society that people who we're seeking to protect don't want the protection themselves, whether you're talking about airbags or the 18-year-old drinking age and purchase age, and then the 19, or the age at which one can drive, or even the use of cocaine. There are a lot of people who would say to you, hey, free us up. Leave it to us to decide whether or not we ought to take coke. We have a society that is against that kind of total freedom, and that says when a majority of the people think that a restraint is good, we're going to impose a restraint even if you don't like it. For example, we have a restraint against having more than one wife at a time or more than one husband at a time. There are some people who would prefer to do it the way other parts of the world do it. So there's nothing unusual about that complaint.
WKBW from Buffalo asks, do you think raising the age will reduce the number of fatalities?
There is no question that raising the age will reduce the number of fatalities and the number of crashes and accidents and injury, and will save many, many millions of dollars. There is no question about that. As a matter of fact, only this past week, the opponents, some of the legislative opponents, stated their case against the raising of the age to 21. And their case conceded that you would save lives. Well, then what is the argument? Well, some of them say it's inconvenient to some young people. Some people suggest that, well, we have constituents who don't want it. But there is no argument with the basic proposition that raising to 21 will indeed save lives. That's why I'm so strong for it.
WOKR from Rochester If you have the right to vote at 18, don't you have the right to drink?
What are you telling me? You have the right to kill yourself? That's silly. I mean, I hear this. Well, you send them off to war, don't you? Shouldn't they be older? Well, you shouldn't send them off to war. And the age, you can vote at 18. You have to be 35 to be governor. You have to be 30 to be senator. I mean, the age varies from place to place. I don't see the logic of saying, when we're proposing something that would save lives for people in that category, and people they might kill, incidentally, I don't see the logic of saying, well, in other cases, we're allowed to do things at 18. We're trying to save the lives of my daughter Madeline and other people in that category. And it's absolutely clear that you will save some lives, and you will save money, and you will avoid injuries. Under those circumstances, I think this argument pales to insignificance.
WICZ from Binghamton, is the border crossing problem as legitimate a fear as people believe? Won't kids drink anyway, no matter what?
Well, then take off all the drinking ages. Won't they take drugs no matter what, so then get rid of all the drug laws? Won't they fool around no matter what, so get rid of all the regulations? That's not a good argument. Or go to the governors. Go to governors like Tom Kean. Go to governors who were once against raising the purchase age, but then saw it raised and saw what happened as a result. Go to the people in Pennsylvania who can tell you that on the bordering counties to Pennsylvania, 1 out of 8 or 9 or 10 of the people involved in accidents were people from their state who were coming over, because there it was 21, coming over into New York because it was only 18. So the evidence is very, very clear. Whoever opposes the purchase age to 21, increasing it, must oppose it, notwithstanding it will save lives. There's no question about that. If you're going to be against this, you have to say, even though it saves lives, I'm against it for the following reason, then fill in the blank.
WIXT from Syracuse, by raising the drinking age, don't you run the risk of creating a black market business aimed at teens, not unlike drug trafficking?
Yeah, then by similar logic, don't you, when you make a rule against using certain products, don't you create the danger of a black market? When you make a rule against using certain drugs, don't you create the danger of a... People's ingenuity will always work to subvert and get around and avoid laws. But after all is said and done, you will save lives by raising it to 21. No matter how hard they try to get around the law, some people will live up to it, some people will be affected by it, and it will save some lives. There is no question it won't be perfect, and that people will figure out ways to beat it, but that's no argument against doing the good that you can do by passing the law.
WPTZ Plattsburgh, the state is progressively raising the drinking age on the rationale of cutting down drunken driving. Doesn't the logical extension of that become a ban on drinking in public establishments for all ages?
That's called in Latin reductio ad absurdum. Some things can be reduced to an absurdity. Almost everything can be. And what we ought to do is avoid reducing it to absurdity. So you don't go on forever. I, for example, am against a drinking age of 58. Why? Because it's absurd. That's why. Because it wouldn't work. That's why. And so the answer to this questioner is, yeah, let's try to avoid unreasonableness. Going to 21 is not unreasonable. Other states have gone to 21 around us, and if we go to 21, we may be able to have a uniform pattern in the Northeast, which would be very good for everybody. That's reasonable.
WNYT Albany, what do you say to businessmen who have built drinking establishments around colleges and whose livelihood depends on students for business? Isn't it sort of changing the rules in midstream for them?
Well, if I had a businessman like that come to me, I would probably say to him, imagine it's your daughter whose life we're saving, your son, maybe your wife. What do you say now?
WWNY Watertown, Governor, how do you intend to keep alcohol away from people under 21, even with a 21 drinking age?
Oh, it won't work perfectly. It'll just make it more difficult and save some lives and avoid some injuries in the process. There are a lot of other things you have to do, too. I have great confidence in the ability to educate people, especially young people, to their own welfare. We have been told in some parts of the state that drug usage is down, and the only explanation we can find is that the young people, through the educational process, through television, frankly, and the media, through schools and drug programs in the schools, are beginning to understand that this is not good for you. So we have to continue our educational effort. We have to continue enforcement. We have controversial program called sobriety checkpoints, where the state police will stop you to see if you're driving while drunk. A lot of people don't like that, but we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to make the laws as tough as we can. So raising the purchasing age is part of an overall program. Even at that, it won't work perfectly. You know, most of us shower every day. You're never perfectly clean. You come as close as you can.
WGRZ Buffalo. Is there any thought to keeping beer and wine at 19, but raising the age to 21 for hard liquor?
Oh, we'd like to do it across the board, 21.
WBNG Binghamton. Would you be willing to consider remedies that tread less on the personal liberties of the majority of people who behave as responsible citizens?
There are a lot of rules that do that. And if you could work it out so that it was effective, if you could separate the people who you know are not going to violate the rule, but how do you tell? Yes, we're always open to reasonable approaches that will target the population that we're trying to restrain, but it's not always easy to do. If somebody comes up with a good suggestion, I'd be pleased to listen to it.
WSTM Syracuse asks, why should New York have a single age of majority for voting, the draft, and drinking? Won't the age change lead to confusion?
I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I've not proposed it this year, but it deserves some thought. I think that's a good, intelligent suggestion. Let's start by changing the purchasing age to 21 and then work around it.
WTEN Albany. Your argument has been that if one life is saved, the new law would be worthwhile. Following that rationale, why not raise the age limit to 25 or 45 or ban alcohol altogether?
Once again, there is a point of reasonableness. We're always drawing lines. Why did you say 18 in the first place? Why did you say 19 in the second place? Why are you saying 21 now? Why are you saying 30 years of age before you can be a senator? 35 before you can be president? Why not say 47? You draw lines. We do it all through our lives. In all things moderation, Aristotle said. And what he was suggesting was that there is an infinite possibility of extension and degree. We have to draw reasonable lines. 21 is reasonable, especially in light of the experience of the rest of the nation. You know who else thinks 21 is reasonable? President Reagan, the National Transportation Safety Board, Ann Landers, all the governors of Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. It's a very popular, reasonable conclusion.
WKBW in Buffalo. Governor, do you think that the problem would be solved if the drinking age were to be raised to 21, or do we need more effective crackdowns on drunk drivers on the road now?
21 is not enough. It's necessary, but we need to do a whole lot more. Enforce the law more rigidly, more vigorously, have more severe penalties in some cases, do a lot more education. We have to go all out, and we will.
WOKR Rochester asks, Governor, do you have any proof that crime and DWI are lower in states that have a 21-year-old drinking age?
There's no question about it. The proof is so clear that no one's been able to refute it. And again, I would remind anybody who asked this question that the opponents, some of the legislative opponents, published a report a week ago in which they stated their opposition, and they were not able to refute the fact that you will reduce substantially drunk driving, accidents, and death by raising the age to 21. Their argument really is it's not worth it even if you do save lives.
WIXT Syracuse. If governmental leaders are truly concerned about the drinking problem, wouldn't it be wise for them to set a good example and prohibit alcohol at gatherings such as political fundraising events? Teens tend to parrot their elders.
That's not a bad idea either. And as one who's been involved in a lot of these events, it's expensive having the liquor. If somebody could figure out a way we could beat that expense, I'd be all for it.
WPTZ Plattsburgh. Younger voters are often inclined toward supporting the Democratic Party. Do you feel that once again raising the drinking age could alienate this constituency?
Even if that were true, I'd be for raising the purchasing age to 21.
WNYT Albany asks, the statistics show that accidents are caused by only a small percentage of the young drivers. Why not just get tougher across the board?
Well, we are going to get tougher across the board in addition to raising the age of 21, and we are doing that. But that's not mutually exclusive with raising the age to 21. Remember that raising the age to 21 is very useful, I think a necessary step, but it's only one step. There are many steps we'll be taking.